Guys, it's John, and I wanted to hit our plays for this week. Coming off, probably think our worst week of the season. At week one might have been. We had a really bad week one, did all right for a bit, and then last week was a pretty rough week. Just a lot of things as far as narratives that didn't make much sense for me. The Jaguars being like probably the biggest example. Especially 2 games in London, kind of basically knocking them out of playoff contention. But again, it could be just a complete rebuild year. Maybe they pull something really crazy and give them like a first overall pick type deal, because I do think they're going to rebuild this team to be pretty formidable for whenever they do move to London. So it could be a deal like that. So we got two like rebuild teams basically playing each other here, and honestly, at first I was liking Jacksonville because I was thinking, 2-5 with the way the playoffs are set up, a couple wins, and they could be on the outside of the bubble. I don't think they're going to really mess around with that, to be honest. I just think it's going to be a horrible year for them, because I'm actually leaning closer to them getting something like a top 3 pick versus, them being in contention. They're just not there, in my opinion. So, thought about the Patriots cover, and I actually like the Patriots win. I don't think too many people are expecting Jacksonville to lose both London games back to back. And it would really be a way of sealing their season and just showing that they are 100% rebuilding. Whether that's going to be getting a quarterback that's not Trevor Lawrence, or just, a free agency pickup and then a really good like defensive player or something, or receiver. And then Trevor Lawrence suddenly is good again next year, which they do with quarterbacks all the time. So the more I think about it, I actually like the Patriots here for the straight up win. So I like the plus 220. So I like the Patriots to win this game. Of course, that means I like them to cover, but I'm playing the win. Titans Bills here, 9 points, a decent amount to be given up. They didn't look crazy good against the Jets. They played well, obviously. They won the game. It was a different type of game with the wind and all that stuff. Freaking field goals clanking off the post. But yeah, I think 9's pretty heavy. I'm going to take the Bills to cover the 9. Texans Packers here. This is an interesting one. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans, because you have to have a team established that's not the Chiefs. And you can say that's the Ravens. I guess you could argue that's the Bills. But I actually think it's the Texans. I think that's going to be the team that's established as the team that can beat the Chiefs. People will believe it, between getting Diggs over the offseason, the way CJ hasn't really lost a step. And then the argument for the Packers would be to make this NFC North just like unstoppable, right? Where if the Packers win, the worst team would be the 5-2 Bears. So, or I'm sorry, the 4-2 Bears, technically by percentage points. So it could really go either way. I think more people probably would be on the Texans because they've been more consistent. Packers have had a little bit of an easier schedule. But I do like the NFC North narrative, and these teams are all going to be playing each other, like I said. So I still like the Bears to get into the wild card. The Packers winning, in my opinion. I thought at first like these teams were all going to be closer to like 500, and I still think they'll finish maybe a little above 500. Like a couple games, 9-8, 10-7. I don't think they're all going to have like double-digit wins, but I think between where the public probably is, and just again to make this division something special, especially each team does have a pretty outside of Darnold. Each team does have a pretty, in my opinion, good draw at quarterback, or at least a young quarterback or something of that nature. So I'm going to go with the Packers here. I also think, even being at home, I don't think they should be favorites against the Texans. I feel like it should be almost a dead even money line, but with all that, yeah, I think the Packers cover the 2.5. Eagles, Giants, this one to me just looks like the biggest trap. Oh, and by the way, if you notice I'm picking some home teams, there is some logic behind this as well. I think we only had like 2 home teams win all last week. You can say 3, but the Bears technically won in London. So yeah, I think it was like 10-2 in favor. Well, if you count the Thursdays and the prime times, I think it was like 12-2, 13-2 in favor of the home teams. So, like, as you can see, Bears not even a home team. Ravens, Eagles, Packers. Yeah, so 3, really, at home. So I think the home teams are going to get some wins this week. So that's kind of, and I'm not saying they're going to get the amount that the away teams got last week. I think it's going to be closer to normal where, maybe the home teams win 60% of the games, something like that. So anyway, this also just looks like a giant trap to me. And it just seems like they're not really talking much about the Eagles. You got the Eagles and Cowboys almost doing the exact same thing, being definitely underperforming, even though they have a really good, they both have good squads and all that stuff. They're both, again, underperforming and just losing games they shouldn't lose, getting beat pretty bad. But they're treating the Eagles kind of like, yeah, they could turn it around, they should turn it around, and they're like not really talking about it. Whereas the Cowboys are like a weekly talking point where it's like, this is unacceptable, this team's a joke. So I feel like they're doing that for a reason, and I feel like there's some reverse psychology there. Again, the Cowboys are still my Super Bowl pick, and I think that's why they're starting off the way they are. The Eagles, on the other hand, I feel like they are barely a wild card team, and maybe they missed the playoffs. I think I had them making the playoffs in my initial prediction video, and I still think they can get in there, but I don't think they're going to go far at all. Whereas, again, I think the Cowboys, I think a lot of people are overlooking them. Now that I think about it, I don't know if I did have the Eagles in there. I have the Commanders, the Bears, and I'm trying to think of my third wild card team. Maybe it was the Eagles. But either way, this game in particular, it just makes no sense for me. As bad as the Eagles are playing, the Giants aren't playing good either. You got Barkley returning to New York. He probably does good. But I think the Giants go ahead and win this game. So I like them with the plus 150. Now this one, normally, I'd say it looks like a trap. Because even though the Vikings do have a better record, I think most people still see the Lions as the better team. But again, and they're at home with the better record, it definitely justifies them being favorites. And even though I think more people will be on the Lions, I'm still going with the Lions in this game. Again, I think they want to keep this division super close. And a Lions win would be very convenient to keep that close, because then the Vikings play the Bears twice still. I think they play the Packers one more time. And it makes it where, again, the Bears still play the Lions twice. There's a lot of matchups left in this division, so they can, just in a couple games, get it where, again, whoever is meant to be in the playoffs is in the driver's seat. And again, I honestly, I still don't have the Vikings making the playoffs. I know it sounds crazy. I'm sure Vegas has them at like minus 1,000 or something. But since the division's so close, again, only one team can win the division, knocks it down to a wild card spot. And I don't know. I just have a feeling that, like, of all the teams in the division, they're the ones I, for some reason, think are least likely to make the playoffs. The Lions, I know, I'm almost positive Caleb's going to get a wild card spot. And then at least Packers, Vikings, and I would honestly lean Packers as far as these two teams, especially with Darnold at quarterback. I don't think they keep that up. So yeah, I think the Lions give the Vikings their first loss of the year, so I like the Lions, obviously, straight up. This one's one of those that can go either way. The Falcons, I think and I said this before, I think they're going to have a good year. Them or the Bucks, kind of disposable in my opinion, but even when the Saints were doing good, the first 2 weeks, I had gone into why I thought Bucks Falcons were the only teams that made sense to win the division, and I still think that. That being said, I'm going to actually go with the Seahawks in this game just because it just keeps things a little closer in the NFC. And the Falcons, sure, they could start off 5-2. I think there's going to be more public on the Falcons. The line looks normal. There's nothing crazy about the line. You might say it's maybe a couple points light, but the Falcons haven't done that much. I do find the over-under pretty interesting. It's pretty high for these two teams. Makes me like the over more than the game itself. But yeah, I like the Seahawks here for the win. The value's there. Bengals, Browns. Bengals, again, there has to be one team that like mounts a comeback, right? And we can already rule out the Jags. And when I did my playoff video, the Bengals were a team I had getting in. and that hasn't changed. So they win. The question comes down to, do they cover? And I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say they cover. They give them a, I think, pretty decisive win here, and then that way going down the line, when they play some pretty good teams, it'll make a little more sense. I just think, again, Burrow is one of the only quarterbacks that, assuming they make the playoffs, people might believe could beat Mahomes. So that's a pretty strong reason to have him looking good. So yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals minus the 5.5. This one's a tough read because both teams are like really injured, and I don't think either one's making the playoffs. And I think they both basically abandoned their seasons when, we got Richardson. I think he's injured again, right? They got like Flacco in. I don't think they're going to run that story back. And then Tua's not playing. So it's a coin flip type deal. I do lean Dolphins just because they've been looking pretty bad since Tua got hurt. The Colts have at least been hanging and in some cases winning. I think the Dolphins did get a win against, I don't know if it was Seattle or somebody. They did pick up a win, but it wasn't, they haven't looked great. So again, I'm going to go with Miami here for the win, straight up. I probably should take the cover on this one, but I'm going to go with the win. Panthers, Commanders. For this one, I like the Commanders for the cover. Laying 9.5 is a lot to lay. Coming off a loss, it was. They played a decent game, and they played a good team in the Ravens. But again, I get it's the Panthers, and the Panthers are really bad. But usually when I see minus 9.5, I expect that to be San Francisco or something, or the Chiefs, not the Panthers, or I'm sorry, not the Commanders. So just seems a little heavy. I don't think people are going to be fighting to take Washington minus 9.5. So I think they're going to cover this game. Daniels, and they play the Bears next week, so Daniels probably puts on a clinic. Caleb just put on a clinic. Just makes sense that they do that before they have the battle of the two rookies. So Commanders minus 9.5. Raiders, Rams, I'm going to take the Rams minus 7. Again, I get they're a much better team. I get the Raiders are in shambles and just traded Devontae. But even with that, to have a 1-4 team as a 7-point favorite just makes no sense to me at all. Again, I know it's not all what you see on paper, but it just doesn't make sense to me at all. I think the public's looking at this seeing upset potential because the Raiders have upset people before with a bunch of nobodies. It's like not like they haven't done it. They've been doing it for a while. So, I mean, they did it with the Ravens. And yeah, again, they had, I think Adams played that game, but their team was still pretty sorry. So, I think people look at this matchup and they definitely see an upset potential. The Rams probably look pretty strong here. I think it's going to be a pretty one-sided game. I give the Raiders a couple field goals, and the Rams probably score somewhere in the 20s, maybe even high 20s, I'll say. High 20s to I'll say 9. 27 to 9 or something like that is kind of how I see this one going. So yeah, I got the Rams here at the cover. Chiefs, Niners. Another interesting one. Again, I get that they're at home, but you have the undefeated two-time Super Bowl reigning Chiefs against the Niners, who they beat in the Super Bowl. Niners are favorites. A little odd in my opinion. So I think, and the last two times we picked with this logic, we won. It was the last 2 years, because I think we had Super Bowl matchups both years. One might have been actually from 2 years ago. It was when we had the Chiefs beating the Bucks on Monday Night Football, I think it was, right after Brady had beat Mahomes in their last matchup in the Super Bowl. And then I'm pretty sure, was it Eagles-Chiefs? Where the Eagles won I think they won the following year or something like that. But either way, I think this matchup, it's going to go to the team that lost in the Super Bowl, kind of get something back here, and give the Chiefs their first loss. And Mahomes just seems to have a lot of history with the Niners in general. Obviously, two of his 3 Super Bowl wins came against them. I know he had the Niners had I think it was Brock Purdy, I think, lost his winning streak to the Chiefs last year. Remember, he had won X amount of games in a row. Or it wasn't that he lost to the Chiefs. I think it was the Niners' last loss before he went on his winning streak. That's what it was. I'm almost positive. Was against the Chiefs. So the Chiefs beat the Niners, then the Niners went on that winning streak, which was almost around where Mahomes' winning streak is now, if we include playoffs. So it's almost like a perfect, full circle kind of moment here. So now Mahomes has the winning streak and he's going up against the Niners. So yeah, I think the Niners win this game, and I'm almost positive the announcers will make at some point a mention of how the Chiefs ended the Niners winning streak last year. Or again, I think it was they went on a winning streak after they played them, something like that. Very similar amount of games. And then again, now the Niners will be the one to end the Chiefs winning streak. So Niners win. This one has me a little. This one and the Jets have me a little apprehensive, just because I think one of the two might be a win, no cover, like a 1 point game. But I'm just going to take the covers. So here I'm going to take the Niners to cover. And if you didn't know, I got the Jets cover. And again, I think they're going to make the playoffs, especially now they got Devontae Adams. And you might say, well, now the public's going to be all over them. The public, I feel like they've been on them. I feel like a lot of the public just believes in the Jets in general. But I don't think they'd be setting them up with all these people, get rid of the coach, do all these things, just to have them fizzle out. I think it's going to be a year-long story with the Jets. And again, I got the Steelers finishing right around 500 because it seems like the last couple of years they've been teasing Tomlin's first losing season, and then he always seems to get that one win that, I think last year they might have even been 10-7, but he always seems to get that win at the end of the year that secures another winning season. So to me, it makes way more sense here. Steelers move to 4-3. Also helps with Joe Burrow, obviously, and the Bengals. Even though the Bengals will be a wild card anyway, the Steelers, again, are most likely fighting for a wild card. It's the Ravens division, in my opinion. So the Steelers, again, winning here wouldn't make much sense to me. But the Jets winning makes the world of sense. Then they're only one game really behind the 7th seed, I believe. So got the Jets covering the 2 points here. And we got 2 Monday games. I'm going to cover them now because a lot of times Monday's a work day. Sometimes I get to bed a little earlier on Sunday, so I want to make sure I get them out. So a lot of times I'm positive I'm going to get them out, and then I don't. So I'm going to cover them tonight. Ravens, Bucks here. I like the Bucks to cover. I'm not going to take the win. I'm going to take the cover. I think, again, more people should be on the Ravens, even with it being in Tampa. I just think, again, the people see the Ravens as a much better team. But, again, I think the Bucks with Mayfield, they definitely see something there. And they also, again, I think they're just going to fade the public. So I think more people will be on the Ravens. So the fact we're getting 3.5, I'll take the Bucks with the 3.5. It could definitely be a field goal game, especially because it's prime time. So got the Bucks plus 3.5. And then Chargers, Cardinals. Again, this one, sometimes hard to tell because I do believe in narrative games. So, you have maybe, I haven't seen the Chargers on prime time a ton this year. So you would think they would want to make them look good. But we're also running 2 primetime games, basically at the same time. So there'll be eyes on the game, but I don't think everyone's going to be tuning into Chargers, Cardinals. I think the Cardinals get this one, actually. I think more people are going to be on the Chargers. They've had a couple nice blowouts, the Chargers have, and outside of that, when it gets to the Niners, which we did call, the Cardinals haven't done much this year. So I think, again, it keeps the divisions close. Not the divisions, I should say, like the conferences, wild card teams. And it makes more sense, in my opinion, for the Cardinals to win this game. And again, especially because I think way more public's going to be on the Chargers here. Just because the Cardinals really aren't that good. And almost every game outside of the Niners game, again, which I think they were like 6-point dogs, the Cardinals have been like pick'ems in games where I feel like they should be dogs. So Vegas obviously has the Cardinals better than where I think the public thinks they are. And then Kyler always, he seems to be like Rex Grossman. Remember him for the Bears? Like, he would either be a perfect passer rating or just terrible. I feel like Kyler either just does absolutely nothing or he plays like an MVP. And I feel like that's what we're going to get. Now, the Chargers defense has been, and that's another thing, they've been showing how great the Chargers defense is this year. And I don't think many people expect, Kyler to come out and look like an MVP like he does some games. But again, the Niners have a good defense and he looked good against them. So I think we see more of the same here. So I got the Cardinals winning this one outright. The line just looks a little off to me. So yeah, I wanted to hit the Monday games just in case, like I said, tomorrow I couldn't get them out. And I think we have a pretty good week this week, just because a lot of them, like, we're kind of at the point of the season where, like, sure, there's a lot of games left still, but if too many of these teams fall to 1-6, 2-5, I just don't think there'll be a realistic way to have towards the end of the year a lot of teams fighting for the playoff spot. So it'll be almost determined by like week 12. So I don't think that's going to happen. So for some of these games, it makes a lot more sense in my opinion. Like again, the Bengals here, the Jets here. I had just gone to the Cardinals. Like for a good bit of them, it just makes way more sense in my opinion for certain teams to win. So I think we're going to have one of our better weeks this week, just because usually as the season progresses, that does happen, and also certain teams I kind of have an idea, like Jags. I could just tell that they're in rebuild mode, so I would not be surprised at all if they were upset. That's why I like the Patriots. Whereas you can see the Bengals, you can kind of see the difference, the contrast, where it looks like they are just starting to build momentum and get going. So, yeah, I think we have a strong one. I shouldn't say another after last week, but for the most part, I think we've been over the target pretty well this year, calling certain divisions, certain teams. We'll have to see how it all develops, of course. We're still pretty early into the year, but approaching the halfway point. So, at a point where kind of something has to give. So, yeah, the Jets-Steelers should be really interesting. I said this last week, but I'll say it again. I really would be surprised if the Jets lost this game. And maybe that's going to be the story. Maybe it's just a complete, punishment for Aaron Rodgers. It is the third year in a row now where he's looking like a bum. And now you bring in Devontae, and then if he looks like a bum with Devontae, it's just more of a punishment for Rodgers. But I don't know. I think there's a bigger picture, and to me it makes a lot more sense again for the Jets to win this game. And I'll go with the cover as well. So yeah, expecting a really good week this week, and I think our playoff picture is going to start shaping up pretty nice. Football or basketball is like right around the corner, so that video I'll have our season opener games out before game one. I want to make sure we cover the NBA, and then very soon I'm going to have an NBA playoff prediction video as well. And admittedly, it's a tougher year for me. The West, again, I have more of I feel like pulse, hand on the pulse, whereas the Eastern Conference, I really am not sure. Vegas is loving the Celtics to repeat. They're plus 300, and then it jumps to plus 800 for the next team. And maybe they do get back there. I'm not sure. But I don't think they're going to win it again. I just don't. Last year, I thought they were going to win for a specific reason. This year, I think they shake it up. And it could be a complete dark horse out of the East. I'm not sure. But I'll have my playoff video, and in that video, of course, I'll have our NBA Finals prediction. So there's only a handful of teams that make sense to me. But again, I don't think it's going to be Boston winning the championship again. They might do the back-to-back thing, but I don't think so. So yeah, take care and happy earnings.